I entered my son's hospital room after his accident put him in a coma. The doctor said, "There's little chance he'll wake up." My wife left without a word, leaving me alone at his bedside. When I reached to hold his hand, a small key fell from his pocket. Attached was a note with shaky handwriting. "Dad, use this to unlock what's inside." Chapter 1. The Crash and the Silence. The ICU smelled of antiseptic and despair. Machines beeped in measured rhythm, the kind that slowly drains hope from even the strongest man. I stood just inside the doorway, my feet glued to the cold white tiles. My son, my only child, lay motionless in the hospital bed, a maze of wires and tubes connecting him to blinking machines that hummed with indifference. He was 17. A junior in high school, smart, quiet, thoughtful, always a little different. Always mine. The doctor's voice was quiet, but final. Severe head trauma. He may not wake up. If he does, he won't be the same. My wife didn't say a word. No tears, no rage, no trembling lip. Just a cold glance and a muttered, "I can't do this," before she turned and walked out of the room, and out of our lives. I didn't stop her. I stepped forward inch by inch until I was beside the bed. I took his hand, cold, limp, yet still warm with life, and whispered, "I'm here, buddy. I'm not going anywhere." That's when I felt it. A small clink. Something hard in the pocket of his jeans beneath the hospital gown. I gently reached in and pulled it out. A tiny silver key. Not a house key, more like a lockbox or drawer key. Attached to it was a scrap of paper, worn and smudged with dried sweat and dirt. Scrawled in his handwriting, shaky, rushed, but unmistakable, were 6 words that made the air leave my lungs. "Dad, use this to unlock what's inside." I stared at it, heart pounding. Inside what? Where had he kept this? Why didn't he tell me? But deep down, I knew this wasn't just some teenage secret. This key was the beginning of something. And whatever it unlocked, it wasn't just about him. It was about us. Chapter 2. The Hidden Drawer. I didn't sleep that night. I sat beside my son's bed, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. The machines whispered their cold reassurances that he was still here. Barely. I held the key in my hand, turning it over and over, trying to piece together what he could have meant. What was inside? At dawn, I finally left the hospital, after whispering to him, "I'll find it, son. Whatever this is, I'll find it." I drove home, gripping the key so tightly my palm had lines etched into it. My wife's car was gone, her closet half empty. She had truly left. I wasn't surprised. We had grown distant since the move to this city. She was always too tired, too busy, too overwhelmed, and I always made excuses for her. But the way she walked out of that hospital room? That wasn't exhaustion. That was abandonment. I walked into my son's room, his sanctuary, a place of posters, books, and gadgets. He had always been a quiet inward kid, but observant. Far more than people gave him credit for. I scanned every drawer, every lockable box, every notebook. Nothing. Then I saw it. The old wooden desk I'd bought him when he was 10. He used to keep a little sketch journal in its side drawer. I opened it and noticed something strange. The inner panel at the back didn't sit right. I tapped it. Hollow. There was a seam, almost invisible. I reached in and pressed gently, and click. A hidden compartment opened. Inside was a small, black leather notebook. And taped to the inside of the panel, a USB drive. I sat down slowly, feeling a chill crawl up my spine. I opened the notebook. The first page had my son's neat handwriting. Nothing rushed this time. It simply read, "Dad, if you're reading this, then something went wrong. You always told me to speak the truth even if it hurts. So here it is." What's inside this notebook and on the USB changes everything. My hands trembled as I turned the page. What followed made my stomach turn and my breath catch in my throat. There were dates, times, descriptions, photographs, names. It wasn't a journal, it was an investigation. And the person he had been watching, documenting, and quietly unraveling for over 6 months was my wife. Chapter 3. His Silent Surveillance. I flipped through the pages in disbelief. My son, my quiet, thoughtful son, had been secretly documenting my wife's behavior for half a year. The level of detail stunned me. It wasn't the work of a suspicious teenager. It was methodical, patient, strategic. December 3rd, 11:12 p.m. Mom left for book club. I followed from a distance using my scooter. She met a man at a gas station, got into his car, followed them to Marriott City Center. They kissed in the parking garage, room 708. Every entry was like that. Time-stamped, unemotional, precise. He had written proof. Receipts from restaurants she claimed she'd never been to. Photos of her holding hands with a man I'd never seen. Even screenshots of bank transfers made from our joint account, funneled into a private one under her name. And then, halfway through the notebook, it got darker. There was a section labeled Plans. My heart pounded. I overheard Mom on the phone with someone named Carl. Said Dad wouldn't be a problem once the inheritance was settled. She's planning to push for power of attorney if I stay unconscious. Number. This wasn't just cheating. This was premeditated betrayal. She was going to use my son's coma and my grief to seize control of everything. The house, the business, even my late father's property, which I'd recently inherited and hadn't told many people about. She knew. Because I had told her. And now she was preparing to act like the loving mother and grieving wife while I broke into pieces. I stared at the USB. There was only one thing left to do. I took a deep breath, plugged it into my laptop, and opened the only folder inside. Its name, for Dad. Watch everything. The first video started automatically. It was grainy, time-stamped 2 weeks before the accident. It showed my wife and a man in our kitchen. The same man from the photos. She laughed while sipping wine and said clearly, "It'll all be yours soon. He's too stupid to see what's coming." And with the kid out of the picture, well, no witnesses, right? The man replied, "What if he wakes up?" She scoffed. "Then he'll just think it was an accident." I felt bile rise in my throat. My son's accident wasn't an accident. And now I had proof, real, undeniable, cold-blooded proof, and that's when it hit me. They had tried to kill my son, and failed. Now it was my turn, not for revenge, but for justice. Chapter 4. The trap is set. I sat in my darkened office, the USB still glowing faintly in the laptop, the weight of what I'd seen pressed heavily on my chest, but I didn't have time to mourn. Not yet. My son was alive, barely, and the people who did this were still walking free, laughing, planning, waiting. No more. It was time to act. I copied every file, every time-stamped video, every transaction and image onto 3 encrypted drives. One for me, one for my lawyer, and one that would stay in a safety deposit box downtown. Then I reached out to the only 2 people I could trust. First, Detective Raymond Holloway. He was retired now, but back in the day, he'd helped me with a business security issue. I knew he'd still have connections in the department. I didn't tell him much over the phone, just, "Ray, I need you to see something. It's about my son's accident. I believe it was attempted murder." There was a silence. Then, "I'll be there in an hour. Bring everything." Second, I called my corporate attorney, Linda Cho, a brilliant, ruthless mind who once sued a Fortune 500 CEO into bankruptcy for breaching a contract. I'd only used her for business matters before, but this time was personal. "Linda, I need to update my will, power of attorney, and file a restraining order." "Against who?" "My wife." Silence. Then, "Understood. I'll be at your office by 9 a.m. tomorrow." While waiting for them to arrive, I reviewed the hospital security footage I'd bribed an orderly to send me. Sure enough, the day after my son's coma, my wife had visited. And she wasn't alone. There he was, the man from the videos. They hadn't even tried to hide their relationship. He touched her lower back while she stood next to our son's bed. She kissed him, right there in the ICU. And then they whispered something to the nurse, walked down the hall, to the records room. I called the hospital administrator immediately. "Hi, this is Daniel Hawk. I'm calling to report an unauthorized access of my son's medical file. I have video evidence. I suggest you review your logs before I contact the press and the medical board." By the time Detective Holloway arrived, I had everything laid out, neatly categorized in folders on a flash drive. He watched the videos. His face was stone. Jesus Christ, they were going to kill the kid, and maybe you too. This isn't just infidelity. It's conspiracy to commit murder. "Can you reopen the accident investigation?" I asked. "We can do better than that. Give me 48 hours. Don't confront her yet. Let me handle the legal side with Linda. You just keep pretending you don't know anything." "Why?" He leaned in and smiled grimly. "Because people like that get cocky when they think they've won, and if we let her feel safe, she'll hang herself with her own rope." And so the trap was set. I spent the next 2 days by my son's side, speaking softly to him, telling him how brave he was, how proud I was. I didn't know if he could hear me. But then, the most miraculous thing happened. Just as Detective Holloway called to say, "We're ready," my son squeezed my hand, weak, barely perceptible, but real. He was waking up. And soon, the people who tried to erase him would wish they never met either of us. Chapter 5. When the wolf wakes up. The next morning, I walked into the hospital room carrying 2 cups of coffee. One for me, one for the nurse who'd kept me updated throughout the night. But all I could really focus on was him, my son. His eyelids fluttered, his hand twitched again. When I gently whispered, "I'm here, son," his lips parted ever so slightly. He tried to speak but couldn't form the words. Instead, he squeezed my fingers again. Harder this time. Tears welled up in my eyes, but this wasn't the time to break down. Not yet. I leaned closer and said, "Don't speak. Just rest. You're safe now. I promise you, everything's going to be okay." But I wasn't going to wait for karma. I was karma. Detective Holloway and Linda Cho met me at my office later that afternoon. What they brought with them was nothing short of warheads. Daniel, Linda began, your wife and her partner created a fake LLC using your business credentials. They rerouted nearly $700,000 into offshore accounts under shell companies. She placed a thick binder in front of me. Wire transfers, falsified invoices, all linked. You're the legal owner on paper, but you weren't the one sending them. And, Raymond added, we just found traffic cam footage showing the boyfriend, his name's Brent Halverson, at the intersection near the crash site 20 minutes before your son's accident. He was supposed to be in another state, remember? I nodded slowly. But here's the kicker, Raymond continued. Your wife's cell phone pinged at the scene too, and she never mentioned it in her report. You've got motive, access, digital trail, and an attempted murder by proxy. The DA wants a clean slam dunk, Daniel. They'll indict. But they want to catch them red-handed, so here's what we're proposing. The plan was simple. On the surface, I'd host a private apology dinner, just me and her. I'd tell her I knew about the affair, that I was willing to make a deal, that I'd stay silent about the theft and fake companies if she simply walked away with a divorce and no claims on the business. Linda would draft the documents. Raymond would be in the next room, recording everything, and the moment she admitted to any part of the scheme, boom. Handcuffs, public charges, full asset seizure. The trick was keeping a straight face long enough to lure her in. That night, I called her. Jasmine, I said coolly, I know about everything. A pause. You know what? She said. You, Brent, the money, the companies. I'm not even mad anymore. Let's just end this clean. Come over tomorrow night. I'll have the documents ready. You're not gonna fight? Not if you're smart about it. Another pause. Okay, she whispered. I'll be there. She thought she'd won again. She thought I was crawling back, defeated, broken. She didn't know the trap was already locked around her ankles. Chapter 6. The trap closes. I set the table meticulously, her favorite wine, soft jazz humming in the background, and divorce documents folded neatly at the head of the table. Jasmine arrived in a sleek black dress, smug as ever. She walked in like nothing had happened, like we were just going through some amicable split after a rough patch. She glanced around, noting the ambience. Trying to win me back, Daniel? I poured her a glass. Just tying up loose ends. She eyed the documents, then sat across from me, carefully crossing her legs. You always did know how to keep things civil, and you always knew how to hide your knives behind a smile. Her eyebrow twitched, but she sipped her wine. So what's the catch? No catch. Just sign, walk away with what you came in with. I won't even press charges for the money. Charges? She scoffed. Daniel, if you had anything on me, you'd have used it by now. I leaned back. You really think so? Right then, Raymond Holloway stepped into the room, badge hanging around his neck. Jasmine's wineglass froze mid-air. Jasmine Lee. You are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit financial crimes, and suspected involvement